Welcome one, welcome all to the greatest show of them all. It is the NFC East Mixtape, which you can listen to wherever you get your NFC East blog podcasts across the SB Nation universe. You can also watch this on the Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channel or the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel, where you will see the bright, shining, beautiful faces of myself. I am RJ Ochoa from Blog on the Boys. He is himself, Brandon Lee Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation. BLG, welcome back home. I'm not going to tell everybody where you were. But I know your exact latitude and longitude coordinates from where you were before where you are now. I know those coordinates as well, but welcome back nonetheless.
Do you think I look especially yellow or orange on this video? Am I alone in seeing that?
I don't know if it's like there is like some contrast going on.
I think it's
I don't
between
know
my
enough about
shirt
photography. We should ask
and the
Holden.
light.
Yeah, I don't know enough to
We're also
describe
recording
like, the
this
phenomenon that's happening
later in the day. Usually there's more
than
of a
usual.
natural
Yeah.
light happening in my place of residence, so that could be different. But yeah, RJ, it's week 3 in the NFL. We're entering that at least, but we have to talk about what happened in week 2, even though for the Eagles that was almost a week ago now. It's kind of feels like forever ago.
Yeah, Feels Like Forever is a great song from what Disney animated movie? Do you know?
It sounds like a modern one, and
It is a
I
modern
probably
one. Yeah.
have not seen it, so I do not know.
It's from Frozen. Feels like forever.
I have not actually seen the movies. I know what they're about. I played Kingdom Hearts 3. There was the Frozen world in there.
I could
Great
totally
game.
see you being a Kingdom Hearts person. That makes sense.
Great series. Great
Yeah.
game.
Okay, well, we're not here to talk about Frozen. We are here to talk about the NFC East, or as some people are fraudulently calling it, Brandon, the NFC Beast. That is a name that we came up with here on the NFC East Mixtape. The division is 7-1 combined aggregate this season, with the only loss coming within the division when the Cowboys blanked the Giants 40-0. But outside of the NFC East, the NFC Beast rides again.
It's really important that people recognize that we invented that name. And there's a lot of claims out there that we didn't actually do that, but all of them are wrong.
Yeah. I mean, look, Antonio Gates played basketball in college. Ryan Fitzpatrick, friend of SB Nation, by the way, who I interviewed last week, went to Harvard. And the NFC Beast is coined here on the NFC East Mixtape. So that's all I really have to say about that. Well, let's go ahead and get to it. We do go in divisional standing, which did change despite the fact that every single team in the division won last week. That's just kind of the function of the tiebreakers at this very, very early point in the season. But the Dallas Cowboys, of course, finished off there. I've been saying this forever. Sinatra style start to the season. New York, New York. Yeah, I know.
You already did that. I already did that one.
30 they had to finish it because before it was just New York, you know what I mean? But now it's New York, New York. 30-10, the final score over the New York Jets. The Cowboys, kind of the talk of the town right now. Number 1 in DVOA at the moment, number 1 in point differential, number 1 in turnover differential. They're leading the way. It's only 2 games in, but obviously Cowboys fans are really excited with what they've done. The fact that they've blown out some really bad teams. They caught the Jets, as we talked about last week, obviously on the heels of a really, really rough Monday Night Football game to open the season.
My interest in that game, certainly, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, definitely went down once Aaron Rodgers got hurt. It was like, well, that's really not the same thing.
If you'll allow
anymore.
me to interrupt you for a moment, Brandon, because I know I'm appearing on the BGN radio side of things with this show. That's the function of the NFC East Mixtape. But my experiences on, that side of things here across enemy lines, so to speak, has been with our friend John Stolness. All right. And I wanted to shout out John Stolness because he tweeted on Sunday morning, the Cowboys are going to lose to the Jets today. So might be alone.
That. With all due respect to John,
I'm just saying you might be alone in your interest waning. That's all I'm saying. John thought it was possible, and
I was not done. You just interrupted me a couple.
Well, I had to. It was
my interest level. It was never a challenge, but I will say the Cowboys deserve credit for doing what a lot of teams have not done in the NFL early on this season, and that is look like they're kind of a well-oiled, well-rounded machine. There's so many teams out there, which is in part why we'll get to the Eagles later. I think some of their struggles may have been overblown because it's like, who are the teams that are just looking flawless in every way and great and everything is just perfect for them and it's a cakewalk? It's really just a couple right now, and it's a long NFL season that can change, that can stay the same if the Cowboys can find staying power. But give the Cowboys credit for doing exactly what they should do against 2 inferior opponents and not just manage to scrape by against them, but to blow them out, to dominate them, to make it really not even a game. I do think it could have been a little bit more interesting early on if Sauce Gardner holds on to
Right.
a pick six that Dak threw, and then maybe that changes the vibe of things early on. But ultimately, I mean, look, I think we were talking about like the Jets need to make a trade at quarterback. It's a whole different topic, but like Zach Wilson just is not cutting it. They're not going to do anything serious. They're a very unserious team with Zach Wilson as their quarterback, but still a very good win by the Cowboys. Micah Parsons looks pretty unstoppable. And there's every reason to believe right now that Dallas is like the top team, or at least, maybe you can argue if the 49ers are ahead of them, whatever. But I think in my power rankings on bleedinggreennation.com, I'd have the Cowboys number one.
I think everything you said is really fair and really objective and really rational. And I think that Dallas and San Francisco are the only, to answer your question, only two teams or only teams that have looked without flaw right now, right through 2 weeks, which is a very, very small sample size. But every AFC contender has obviously, had stumbles. Some of them have even had losses. Some of them are even winless. The Eagles just have looked a little bit sputtery so far, but still boast a 2-0 record, which is impressive given that they haven't clearly played their finest football to this point. But yeah, I mean, the Cowboys, you're right. I think there was like a collective sigh of relief, obviously, that the pick six didn't happen. That would have given the Jets the lead. And perhaps, the whispers like get a little bit louder. You use the word vibes, obviously, would have changed. But I mean, this was a kind of cruise control victory for the Cowboys. The defense showed up, and I don't really put a lot of blame on Zach Wilson. I agree with you. He finished the day with 3 interceptions, but, about 4 minutes into the fourth quarter, he did not have any, and they were down 27-10. And so it really was just, it was a tough spot for him to be in, you know what I mean? And so, again, I'm not arguing for Zach Wilson, but I do think that the Jets are kind of this sneaky team relative to the NFC Beast, because the Cowboys caught them obviously in this week where they were, still dealing with this. Do they trade for somebody? Do they sign somebody in free agency? But does that change the kind of complexion and the chemistry of this team? Are the Jets then a squad that's able to kind of hold it together and beat teams like the Giants or Commanders or Eagles, who they will play across the rest of the season? I don't know. But my point is, it's hard to imagine them playing worse than they did on Sunday afternoon at AT&T Stadium. The Cowboys offense, we finally got to really see, because, week one didn't really offer an opportunity for that. And we saw, you and I were talking before we started recording about the Chargers and how I locked them up on TGI Football. And did you watch any of that game? I know you were busy, obviously, because you had the weekend off.
No, was that what slot was that in again?
So that was the noon slot, and it went to overtime.
No,
and Mark Schofield did a great job of kind of talking about this on Monday Football Monday. But so the game goes to overtime. The Chargers get the ball first. And first 2 plays, just are like going downtown. Like they're trying to like stretch the field, and it's like, dude, what are you doing? And then on third down, they get nothing. They literally gain 0 yards. They're 1 offensive possession overtime. They lose the game. And Mike McCarthy's offense seems to be I don't want to say complete and total opposite, but it's about putting his skill players and his athletic players in positions to win and to succeed. And we saw Dak Prescott take a lot of that low-hanging fruit. That was a big compliment that we gave to Shane Steichen and the Eagles offense last year, just kind of, again, putting these players in positions to win. And there's value to that low-hanging fruit. And this was a really efficient performance from the Cowboys. And even then, there's, I think, 19th in offensive DVOA right now. They were without Brandon Cooks. They're still without Tyler Smith. But they did enough. And everybody, I would say the doubters or whatever, kind of, bemoaning about the red zone deficiency. They were the number 1 team in the NFL in red zone conversion last year from a touchdown perspective. So I don't think anybody's really panicked. It just wasn't a game where, they needed to really flex. And that's the difference. I know your interest in this game dropped off, but after the Micah Parsons fumble, the Cowboys got really conservative. And Tony Romo talked about on the call on third down that none of the receivers even ran to the sticks. And he was like, what the hell are you doing? And I think the Cowboys were just, comfortable to not get in their own way, to not mess it up, to not do something that would invite the Jets back into the game. They took the free points off of a turnover. And that's the difference, that we're talking about, again, with a very small sample size.
It's the difference between the Cowboys this week and the Buffalo Bills to some extent, where
that's a great point.
They found a way to lose that game. All they had to do with all Josh Allen had to do was not turn the ball over. He could have been just like, totally mediocre, but as long as he took care of the ball and the Bills were able to punt in that game and, take possession and not give the Jets life like they did, then the Bills probably win that game. So that's the difference there. I will, going back to the almost pick six on a like credit to, or not credit, but like on a fairness regression point in a positive way, that's the other side of Dak
Right.
leading the NFL in interceptions last year. Like he's probably, we said this going into the season, probably due for some good luck in some certain instances. So that's how you see it manifest, and then in a big way in that case. But that's the other side of the coin to having the bad luck last year. Kind of evens out in the bigger sample size. So for as much as I'd love to, be here criticizing the Cowboys, can't so far. Again, I'm not gonna hold the opponent thing against them too much because style points do matter, and the way they've defeated these teams so soundly, there is absolutely something to be said for that, no matter who they play. Now, that being said, once you see like a bunch of games like this, it's okay, yes, but like let's actually see the higher quality opponent and let's see what that game looks like, because that's something we have yet to see, and that's not something that the Cowboys can control. They can only play who's on their schedule, as people like to say, but that will be the big fun thing to look to next.
We'll obviously pick games for this week, excuse me, at the end of the show. But Dallas opened as 12 and sorry about that. The orange soda is getting to be 12.5-point favorites against the Cardinals this week. It's down to 12. They have the Patriots at home next week in Zeke Elliott's return. But then they're on Sunday Night Football in San Francisco, and that's the game that everybody's obviously really looking forward to. And even then, the next week they visit the Chargers on Monday Night Football. And so can they contain the offense that we know exists that isn't translating into wins for the Chargers right now? But it's that California swing that's going to be really interesting. Last thing on this game, I don't know if you knew or saw, Tony Pollard hit a career high, in carries, 25 carries for him, and he was actively involved in the passing game as well. Speaking of, Tony Pollard will be a guest on the Blog on the Boys network throughout the Blog on the Boys universe on Thursday, and he said that he was aware of that when I asked him. We pre-taped this on Tuesday, right before you and I are recording, actually, and I mean, I don't know that that's an indication of things to come, but some people want to look at that and be like, well, that's Mike McCarthy wanting to run the ball. I think Mike McCarthy just wants to keep things in front of him. And on Sunday against the Jets, it so happened to align with running the ball. But they utilized all sorts of players. They utilized Kevontae Turpin. Kevontae Turpin has already seen more offensive snaps through 2 games this year than he did all of last year. So I think Mike McCarthy just, again, is completely and totally fine with taking whatever is in front of him and whatever works to the benefit of his all-world defense on the other side.
This has the makings a little bit of a trap for we'll get to that in the future, but looking ahead, because I said, like, when's the next big test? They play the Patriots. Defense looks good. Offense, maybe a little bit more questionable. But that stretch where they have the Niners in California, then the Chargers on the road, although that'll probably be like a home game for the Cowboys, the crowd, and then the Rams after that, and then the Eagles. Like, that's a nice little 4-game stretch where I think we're going to learn a lot more about the Cowboys right now. Right when in that stretch there. For now, it's kind of just like holding serve, doing what they're supposed to do. They're one of the best teams in the NFC, but like, I think it is possible it can be different. Maybe this is a new high for them this year, but like that's the stretch we'll really start to learn more about them. For now, they're kind of just confirming what we already expected in a lot of ways, that they were going to be one of the best teams in the NFC.
As we've always said, October is the very best month that there is, which
Wake
will
me
provide
up when September ends, baby.
This comes out on Wednesday, so it has almost been a week since the Philadelphia Eagles did not cover. I took the Vikings in all the pools that I'm in. I think it was 7.5 or 6.5, depending on where you looked. And Philadelphia won 34-28. Was a little tight, but holy crap, DeAndre Swift had a billion different yards. Kirk Cousins had a big game. And man, the Justin Jefferson. I mean, had a big game. It's okay to say it.
He was clearly not as good as the box score looked, but yes, he played relatively well.
The beginning of that game was in no way on Kirk. Like, the beginning of that game was the Eagles offense, like, kind of sputtering. And there was the special teams fumble. There was the Alexander Madison fumble. And I give Kirk a lot of props for, doing what he could to absolve all the blame for the Justin Jefferson thing. I don't know if people know, you are on record as not hating that rule. Like, it benefited the Eagles last Thursday night, but you have said many times that you're
not
fine
just
with
that.
Right,
not just because it helped the Eagles, to be clear.
I will have your back there. You and Stats are the only 2 people I know that think the rule is fine. But the rule is the rule, and you have to know the rule. And Justin Jefferson, whatever. Jalen Hurts woke up a little bit. I said that I thought this would be the year of Devontae Smith. What has been the fallout of the A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni scuffle that Nick tried to lie about in his post-game press conference?
I think that's overblown. Wow, shock. You're going to hear that from me. But from the standpoint of, it's the same exact – A.J. was that same way when they were blowing out the Giants in the divisional round last year. Same kind of thing happened. He also did not look happy then. And was that an issue? No. The Eagles rolled the 49ers in the championship game and went to the Super Bowl, and A.J. Brown had a great game in the Super Bowl. So I don't really know that it's the biggest issue in terms of like the team is still can be successful. I do think it speaks to a longer standing thing, which is a big reason why back when DeAndre Hopkins became a free agent and everyone's like, oh, Eagles should sign him and then they'll be unstoppable. They'll have, like Devontae and A.J. Brown and Goddard and DeAndre Hopkins. And I'm like, it's not Madden. These players have egos. And I brought up that Giants game as an example of why A.J. Brown would not be cool with another target monster coming into the offense. Same thing with that's why the Eagles were never going to draft someone like Jackson Smith and Jigba with their first round pick. Like, you're not adding a volume dependent guy to this group that already is, you're kind of seeing issues with sharing the ball. So I don't make a ton of that. I make my biggest concern coming out of that Vikings game is more about the quarterback being able to effectively get the ball to his targets.
You were on him early, because I was obviously following your tweets and coverage, and you were on
Thursday night. Yeah,
right. You were on Jalen early in a fair way, and in a reasoned way, I thought, because it was not great. And you tweeted that the Eagles were obsessed with QB power, and that's really what it felt like. I felt like they were just trying to force the Jalen Hurts can run thing. And it wasn't until they just kind of sit back and took what Minnesota gave them. Like, Minnesota was like, hey, run the ball. And it wasn't until that happened that things started to kind of finally break for the Eagles. Jalen hit the big shots that were there. Obviously, the one to Devontae. He kind of hung that first one down low, though. That one almost didn't even work out.
Yeah, the first play, there was some pressure coming down on him. I still think he could have gotten that a little bit. Like the way I was in the press box, I saw that play unfolding and Devontae's streaking open down the field. He's open. I think maybe if he gets that ball out a little bit sooner, if he steps into it a little bit more, which to his credit, he did later on the second Devontae deep target, which ended up being a touchdown. He took a shot. Sometimes you have to do that. You have to step into your throw, deliver the throw. Like, he underthrew it. Devontae still made the catch. Great. But then the Eagles only settle for 3 points there instead of 7. That's 4 points you left out on the field. That's a big deal. Opportunity cost is a real thing, as I like to say. I think some of those runs we were just talking about, it isn't even just the coaching staff. Some of that is Jalen, making the decision on some of these options and whatnot. I do think there's a lot of debate. Is it the coaching staff? Is it Jalen Hurts? I definitely think, you can look at the coaching staff and Brian Johnson and have concern to some extent. At the same time, you don't pay Jalen Hurts $255 million to not be a big part of the equation there. That's such just a big pet peeve I have. I think I've mentioned before in the show with coaching versus players. I feel like people act like those are equal things. How much are the players getting paid? How much are the coaches getting paid? That's not the exact perfect way to analyze it. But at some level, these players are making a ton of money for a reason, because they're the ones who can do the special things and they're the ones who can make plays and make things happen. The coaching can only go so far. I want to read you these stats that our good friend Shil Kapadia had mentioned in the aftermath of Thursday night's game on his Ringer podcast, Philly Special. Jalen Hurts was 593rd out of 600 quarterback performances since the start of 2022.
You're saying this game? This game is the performance?
In success rate, yeah. This success rate.
But just talking about last Thursday night. Just, again, I'm trying to understand.
Yes, that Thursday night performance was 593rd. So there are only 7 worse performances since the start of 2022, just measured by success rate, which isn't a catch-all perfect stat, but it does represent how often something good happens when you drop back to pass. The Eagles produced a positive play on just 23.3% of Hurts' dropbacks. His first 2 game success rates this season are lower than every game out of his 2022 season. So I think it's not unfair to say that Jalen Hurts needs, I'm not saying he's hopeless as a passer, but he needs to be better than he has been.
So to me, I think that this speaks to a point I had, not to be I was right, but I said this, his 2022 season was maybe the greatest year that he'll ever have. And that's not a shame. And that's not oh, what a loser. He can never replicate that year. It was this remarkable year that if he had not gotten hurt, obviously would have won him MVP. And that was my argument for A.J. Brown too, right? Regression can happen just in a statistical sense, where you just simply have less, even though you're not less talented or whatever the case may be. I don't think this is a matter of defenses understand Jalen Hurts now, whatever. It's just like you talked about the Dak thing, you know what I mean? So things that broke your way, luck or whatever. I mean, it flips or it
Yeah,
adjusts
but
or
to
it
this
flips sometimes.
degree, clearly shows that there's something more than just that going on. Like this is more than just natural regression. This is all the way to the other end, at least. Like this, there's something like wrong here, and I think it's not exactly easy to pinpoint. Again, I think the offensive coordinator shares blame. I think Hurts shares blame. You could say some of the players too, the attitude, whatever. They have the bottom line is the Eagles' passing game is not firing on all cylinders right now. There's something out of rhythm. It doesn't look right. It doesn't mean it's doomed 100%, but it is like a legitimate concern if it doesn't get fixed sooner than later.
AJ Brown has the fewest amount of receiving yards to the first 2 games of a season that he has had since his final year in Tennessee. Now, I don't think that means like, oh, he's going to demand out, but he is a passionate player. I don't have to tell you or any Eagles fan that. I don't know that I buy that he would keep that up. I don't know the chemistry, well enough to offer an opinion, an educated one at least, that wouldn't sound like trolling as to whether or not if Devontae kept eating, right, or if the passing game got fixed that way, right? If it was Devontae, if Goddard got involved or whatever, would AJ Brown, would there be discourse there? You know what I mean? Like because that would be the concerning thing to me is, okay, this has to get fixed, and there is this one idea that it has to get fixed a certain way, and if it doesn't, will it be all right? You know what I mean? And so that would be a mild concern. But I think, again, and I said this a little while ago, it's worth mentioning that despite all these, like, things that sound troubling, the Eagles are 2-0. Like, if you can find a way to win in spite of all this, happening, like, that's the mark of a good team.
For sure. And now, they've won 2 one-score games now, and one-score games, as we know, as the Vikings now can attest to, and the other side of that being 0-3 in the 2023 calendar year, in those one-score games. Can't
Can I
always
interrupt
sustain
you
that.
quickly? So they were 11-0 in one-score games last year, right? Everybody knew that, and
Yep.
I tried to defend them more than anyone. I think that that's well on record. I tweeted before their final possession. I said it's going to be hilarious when the Vikings go score a touchdown here to make this a one-score loss. When and of course, like, it happened.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost worth like not scoring in that sense, so people
Hmm.
can't like rub that meme in your face.
I mean, it had the feel of a one-score game. Ultimately, it wasn't like
Right.
totally like, well, the Eagles blew the Vikings out, and Vikings put up like 20 points in garbage time and made it look a
Right.
lot closer than it seemed. It had the feel of a one-score game. Ultimately, yeah. So I definitely think that that's the biggest concern. It's like 2-0 is nice, and I do agree with you. And I said it earlier when we were talking about the Cowboys. How many teams are firing on all cylinders and clicking and looking perfect? They don't play the Super Bowl in September. So there's a lot of time for this to get ironed out. At the same time, again, you want to see progress there. I think anyone would say they believe it can because of the talent there. You're giving them the benefit of the doubt that they can iron that out at some point. But again, it's the more games we go by where it's not happening, it's only going to get exponentially, increasingly more concerning. Before we move off the Eagles, I do want to say, obviously, you have to mention, DeAndre Swift's huge game, 175 yards, insane. I was listening to the TGI football podcast today because I was behind in my podcasting, and I also thought it would be kind of funny to get the takes of prior to week 2, hearing them after week 2. And one of the things that our co-host Steven Serta had mentioned was like, because I wasn't able to be on Friday and give my analysis of the Thursday game. He's like, I want to know why Gainwell was ahead of DeAndre Swift. And great question, because I was asking the same thing after Kenny Gainwell had freaking 18 touches in week 1, and DeAndre Swift had 2, including just 1 carry. Like, what are we doing? I don't know that Swift can be this guy the whole season. I don't know he can be your bell cow back, but if you're giving him the ball 2 times a game, you're clearly messing up. That's clearly not the best approach. So, on one hand, passing game in disarray a little bit, needs to be figured out. On the other hand, it does seem like the Eagles are figuring out their run game, which is not meaningless.
I in no way want to take it away from DeAndre Swift, because like, you put up 1 billion yards, like, you deserve credit for that. And I'm not trying to like cope and make up for Kirk Cousins, but again, it's like, well, yeah, like, if they're just gonna let you run for 6 yards a carry, like, why wouldn't you? Like, what are the Vikings doing? Like, what is Brian Flores doing? And for the record, I gave you the credit for liking the rule before that game. I jumped off the Viking ship before the loss in Philadelphia. No pun intended on the ship thing. But I can't wait to see where Kirk Cousins winds up next year. Hopefully with a team that's
this year. It should be this year. The Jets should trade for him. If you're the Jets, why aren't you trading for him? And also, it'd be funny because the Eagles then play him in week 2 and week 6.
It would be hilarious if he wound up there, given, I don't know if you remember, that's the other team that courted him in 2018.
Yeah, I do
That was
remember
like,
that.
those were the 2 teams. And so, some things just kind of wind up going full circle that way. It would be a crime if you never played for Kyle Shanahan, like after everything we've been through as NFL fans.
That'll happen at some point, but
right.
not
Okay.
now, probably.
Let's take a very, 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 very quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. Brandon, while we were gone, you told me what you did on your plane ride on Tuesday.
I played this app. I mean, not a sponsor, but it's called, what's it called here? Drop Flip.
Cut the
You ever
rope.
played that one?
Wait, what's it called?
Drop Flip.
Drop.
It looks
Flip?
like this. This level's been really hard. I mean, you can't see my phone.
We're only
because of the
seeing
way.
white, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, it's like you, I can't really describe it. You kind of have to just play it to see it. But anyway, that's what I was doing. Also, I was playing Minesweeper too.
On your phone?
Yep.
Are you a big games on the phone person?
Generally no, but on a flight, sure.
Last question on this subject. Are you a big Game Pigeon person? You play the Game Pigeon games with people?
The iPhone games you're talking about? Yeah, I'm really good at Cup Pong and the word games, as you can attest to, because I beat you in those all the. I mean, those are pretty. Honestly, those are probably pretty even matched. You have certain ones that you're better at than I am, but I think same goes for me against you. Anyway,
I really don't like the one that looks like a Scrabble board where you have to move the pieces. Like the reason I like the search one is because like it's such a smooth, physical way to play. So I like that a lot. But yeah, whatever. Okay, the Washington Commanders came back from a 21-3. I don't mean to make this about the Cowboys, but remember when people thought that Sean Payton was a much better option than Mike McCarthy? Like, remember that? Oh man. 21-3 was the deficit that the Commanders face, and for real, serious props, like serious kudos. You cannot overcome that without legit coaching, legit quarterback play, a legit pass rush. They had all those things in Denver, and they almost blew it with the crazy Hail Mary tip ball, and you can argue that there should have been a penalty on the 2-point conversion, but this was an impressive rally nonetheless. Like, again, I think they deserve a round of applause. They are undefeated in the Josh Harris era.
It's really making a difference. Clearly, I mean, that was crazy. That I was watching that at a bar on Sunday evening, after late afternoon, early evening, and I couldn't believe it was caught. And I'm like, and then once they don't get it, I'm like, how do you not get it? How do you not get it if you end up making the Hail Mary?
It was so sad. I think James wrote about this at .com. But if you were a Broncos fan, would you have rather them not caught it? Like, you know what I mean? Then, like,
see, I've been thinking about this recently. There's a lot of like, well, I'd rather almost just get blown out. That I don't think that's ever true. I don't think anyone ever feels that way. There's no way in a blowout you're thinking like, wow, I'm so glad we're not in this game closer and then losing. No one's ever thinking that. That's such a lie. That is such like a hindsight or whatever kind of bias you want to call it thing. That is just, it's not true.
I think it can potentially be true based on the circumstances of your team. So like the Broncos are this like joke, right? That everyone wants to kind of line up and take shots at. So like, when it's just the next one, that is annoying. So like, I'm with you that I think Jets fans would have rather lost like the Broncos did, but I don't think that Broncos fans are happy with their situation, which again is a much bigger deal. But this is about the Commanders. Sam Howell.
Well, it's relevant that we're talking about a Broncos team that I think the vibes have not really changed. I think the bad vibes from last year are very much the 2022 Broncos or the 2023 Broncos do not seem all that different to me than the 2022 Broncos.
No, and they similarly to how the Colts, again, I'm not saying Carson Wentz wasn't fallible for his time there, but he wasn't the only problem, which was my take, all of last year. And, man, they just
Carson Wentz, who's currently unemployed.
Okay, but again, like you agree with me and ultimately did agree with me that, Chris Ballard and Jim Irsay and Frank Reich, they threw him under the bus. And the Broncos did that with Nathaniel Hackett, who obviously had his flaws, obviously is a certain type of person, but like he was very clearly not the only problem there. And I don't think that Sean Payton is infallible for what's happening there. But again, this is about the Commanders. So Sam Howell went 27 of 39 for 299 yards, 2 touchdowns. Terry McLaurin caught one of those. Logan Thomas, the other. Brian Robinson had another impressive day, 87 yards, 2 touchdowns. And again, the pass rush is kind of working for Washington right now. I don't know that I believe in the sustainability here. There are some fraudulent 2-0 teams. I would say the most are Washington, Atlanta, and Tampa. But still, like, give them credit. Like you said about Dallas, you can only play who's in front of you, and the Commanders, a 21-3, deficit overcome is impressive, whoever it's against, even if it's, especially if it's on the road like this one was.
You do power rankings, right, for Blogging the Boys?
That's correct.
Where do you have the Broncos?
Let me see. I had the Cowboys number 1 too, by the way. Just for the record, I have Washington. Hang on, I'm scrolling. I have Washington 16th. I don't know where you have Washington. And I have Denver 29th.
Okay, so and where do you have Arizona?
I have Arizona higher than last week because I thought that Arizona was, and we'll obviously talk about that in a little bit, but that I
Higher
already
than last week, up from what, 32 to 31, or
they were 32. I put Houston at 32 now, which is a bummer because I picked them to win.
The
I put
Commanders have
Chicago.
beaten your number 29 and number 31 team.
30th. Arizona's 30th, so 29 and 30.
Bottom 3, bottom 4, bottom 5 kind of teams that they've beaten, for sure.
So we talked about this a lot with the Dolphins under Brian Flores. What was it? They won like 8 games in a row to finish the season. And
hold on.
were they? Well, I'm just saying, they fell into a 21-3 hole. Like, that's my point. Like, they should be criticized for that too. So to set you up,
I just want to be like, well, you're being hypocritical because you gave the Cowboys credit for beating up on week. Yeah, but again, I said style points matter. How the Cowboys dominated those 2 teams and really weren't even competitive games in for portions of the games. That's not the same thing with the Commanders here. They're getting by these teams. Credit to them for getting by. But I also think you're talking about 1-score game sustainability. Like, obviously some things go their way. The last call of the game obviously went in their way in a big way. So I don't really think the needle has moved yet. Still, I'm still using that phrase for Washington. I'm not more scared of them than I was. I do think this was a nice win in terms of like enjoyability for a franchise that feels like it has a fresh start and they haven't give you a lot to enjoy. But I don't really, what does this win really mean in the bigger picture? Does it really mean things can be different this season? I still don't think that. I think that it's just a fun experience that doesn't translate into a whole lot of meaning other than maybe, again, maybe there is something to Sam Howell there, not enough to, be the next great elite quarterback, but maybe he's enough to be enough right now.
I think it was definitely the right choice. I doubted it. It seems silly. But in hindsight, I'm upset that I didn't give Ron Rivera credit, even though I don't really give him credit for much, but for doing the thing that we always say, right? Like, hey, play the young guy. You know what I mean? Play the development. Like, you never know. You know what I mean? You could uncover something. Like, so kudos to him. They have clearly found somebody who is like capable of starting games in the NFL. But that being said, I will give them credit for being 2-0. On a personal note, and obviously on a biased note, I'm very happy that, these 2 wins will push them out of Caleb Williams, Drake May, territory next year.
Exactly.
Right? Like, that sounds silly, but like these 2 wins will matter for that. Beyond that though, it's not midnight on the clock for Washington. But it like the bartender has been like, okay, you don't have to go home, but you got to get out of here. Like, the lights are about to come on. Everything's about to kind of wake up for them because they have Buffalo on Sunday. Yeah. Then they're in Philadelphia, where they won last year, just for what it's worth. Then they have Chicago in a Thursday night game that's going to be riveting.
That's easy, but the next 2 is really the big stretch for them.
But then at Atlanta, which is a little bit tougher than I think we anticipated. At the Giants, which I don't know. I mean, we're about to, roast them, I imagine. Then Philly at home, at New England, at Seattle, the Giants, at Dallas on Thanksgiving. Like, this is the moment to sell the stock, right? Like, enjoy this week. But, for Buffalo played down to the Jets to the point you talked about earlier. So you never know. It's the NFL, blah, blah, blah. My point is I will give them props. But I'm not ready to say that they're a wild card contender quite yet.
Well, yeah, it'll be easily undone if they go 0-2 against the Bills and the Eagles. If they go 0-2 against the Bills and the Eagles, where do you really feel like you ended up there? Like, do you feel great?
Let's move on. The New York bad at football once again Giants. I had a great tweet. It didn't get enough love. I thought it was an awesome tweet. So you were busy. You said you were at a bar. The halftime score in this game was 20-0. So I tweeted that they were on pace to lose 40-0 for the second straight week. I thought that was really funny, and it didn't get a lot of love. But the Cowboys are playing too, so people were kind of
well. Everyone else is wrong, and you're right, clearly.
Right. 31-28, the final score. Again, 20-0 wasn't even the biggest deficit that they faced. It got up to 28-7 against I don't hate Jonathan Gannon the way that you and your cohorts do. But against one of apparently the more ill-equipped head coaches who's in a tough situation, I think we should give, Jonathan Gannon that tiny little bit of grace, against a starting quarterback who literally was not on the team like 3 weeks ago, against a group of skill position players that if you could trade for one, would you? If you could swap any skill position player on the Eagles for any member of the Cardinals, maybe Hollywood Brown, right? Like, if you're, Alameda Zacchaeus,
Yeah, like instead
type
of
thing.
Kes Watkins, sure.
Or whatever. Yeah. Okay. So fine. But like for the most part, and you love to play this game. Can you name a defensive player on the Cardinals that isn't Budda Baker, who's on injured reserve now?
There's a couple former Eagles on there, so I can. But if you're taking those guys out, one of Kayvon Wallace, who led the Cardinals in tackles in this game, was only cut by the Eagles during final cuts.
He didn't even lead the Cardinals in tackles in this game. So
I thought he did.
No, he had 5, which was tied for the second most. But so. Yeah, I mean, this is a tough team. It was a very.
I'm going by total tackles here.
Okay, fine, whatever. But it was a very tough scene for the Giants to be down. I know Daniel Jones had an impressive second half statistically. I am so out. I like this. This was almost worse than if they had lost. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I haven't seen a lot of Giants fans like
That's
crowing.
Not true.
I mean, whatever, but I haven't seen a lot of Giants fans crowing. I do think that they've been kind of humbled and not important, but more than that, rattled. The Saquon injury is now a thing. Brian Dable said on Tuesday it's possible that they play because they play on Thursday night and that he plays in that game.
Yeah.
They're staying on the West Coast to play the 49ers. Like, dude, it is really, really, really tough right now for the Giants.
They were down what? So they were down 20-0.
But then the margin grew when it was 28-7. They went from 20-point deficit to 21. That's my point.
So they were down what, 60-0 or whatever on the season at that point. That's so.
They were
bad.
Down 68-7.
60. Okay, that's.
But
terrible.
at halftime it was 60-0. To your point.
So I would say if you're looking at it optimistically, if you're a Giants fan, this is a performance to build on. Okay. Really not encouraging in that one game. But if we go out and we win the next game and we continue to kind of put something together off of that, then all of a sudden it doesn't really care, or it doesn't matter how we won that game. No one cares about that. Problem is, you get the San Francisco 49ers next without Saquon, like you mentioned there. And Darren Waller apparently still dealing with some kind of thing that
he said was like not going to go away. I mean,
yeah,
basically.
Which, Steve 6 for 76 in this game, so maybe it's not the biggest issue ever, but still not like great. So yeah, again, I would say if you're looking at it optimistically, something to build on, but I don't really know. I mean, if the Giants beat the 49ers, like great, then yeah, okay, I am buying.
Yeah,
it was
for
a
sure.
Tough start, and they found their footing, and now they are heading in a direction. But I mean, like, it's just a very big if right now.
So also, not that this like really matters, but it kind of does right now when we're still, we're all, I think the reasonable people are kind of being willing to be patient to really make our hard takes as far as, the NFL season, because we're so early. These next 2 Giants games are at San Francisco and then against Seattle. Both of them are on prime time.
It's the same thing as the Commanders. It's like, show us. This is like the show us stretch here.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're bad and if you're like, so right now everyone kind of thinks you're bad, right? Like, not a lot of people saw the Cardinals game. Everybody obviously saw the Cowboys game. But so right now everybody's like, oh man, these dudes stink, whatever. So you go out, you get blown out by the Niners. Well, they really stink. They stunk on Thursday Night Football. Then you get blown out on Monday Night Football against the Seahawks, who looked much better, obviously, last week. Then it's like you're 1-3. It's just really not working out for you. And then everyone will really pick apart that one win and be like, you barely beat the Cardinals. They're tanking anyway, blah, blah, blah. You said like positives if you're a Giants fan. Jalen Hyatt had 2 receptions for 89 yards. One of them went 58 yards. We said it. Like, this is his thing. Thank goodness in my Dynasty League, somebody dropped him. So Jalen Hyatt now part of my Dynasty squad. The Darren Waller thing, I mean, he had 76 yards. But see, like, it's so like some of these feel like empty calories, like what the Giants did because they were in such catch-up mode. So I guess I'm still not like ready to say that they're like completely done, but dude, it's getting dark really early. And have you seen the video of Brian Dable, like the Zapruder film breakdown that there's I don't know who did it. It's not on my screen anymore. Somebody's breaking down whether or not he's actually calling plays. And like from the sideline or whatever. And so that's kind of weird. Like this just has gotten about as bad as it could possibly get, about as fast as it could possibly get there.
Who do you believe in more the rest of this season? Or who do you think is going to finish in third? Do you think it's going to be the Giants or do you think it's going to be the Commanders? In terms of, obviously, we could go through and win and loss right now. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about from what you do know about their schedule coming up soon and also like the vibe and also the fact that, I mean, the spot the Giants are in, they also have already lost a division game, whereas the Commanders have not done that.
I'll answer that two ways and say that I am more worried about the Cowboys Commanders games than I am at least the remaining Cowboys Giants game.
Well, that's easy to say.
Well, I know, but that was honestly true. Not true, but I was at least kind of thinking about drifting that direction before week one. And some of that is that we talked so much about like how Dak owns the Giants. The Cowboys have had like moments of struggle against Washington, even at full health. Now the regular season finale last year was kind of weird, but still, like there have been times where Washington has played them tight, like throughout the Dak Prescott era at least. And if I had to pick who's going to win those two games, I'm picking Washington to win both of them right now. I don't have any faith in the New York has played one kind of not mediocre half of football. You know what I mean? Like and like I know we sat here and crapped all over the Broncos, but like who's a worse team, Denver or Arizona? Probably Arizona, right? So while they both, embarrassingly fell down and overcame the droughts that they dug themselves, at least Washington's was to a better team.
All right, you ready to preview week 3?
I suppose. We have to go in chronological order, right? That's what we decided. So that means the New York Giants are up next after we just destroyed them. They are on the road, as mentioned, against one of the two teams who we agree looks most complete and most infallible in the 49ers, doing so probably without their best player on offense. So they are 10-point underdogs on the road. I mean, I don't know that we have to kind of offer a Giants take at this point. This is going to be an easy night for our buddy Stats. Just, enjoy the game, do your post-game show. Everybody go check out the Gold Standard Network, and, enjoy life at 3-0. I mean, I don't think the Giants have a chance here. Like, it's really difficult to envision how it happens.
I don't know what the Giants' ceiling is realistically. Like, what can you say their ceiling really is? The iteration of this team, not just talking about like where they finish, but like the best version of them. How good can they look? That's unknown. If you want to be again positive, optimistic, although I don't really think it's that great. The floor, we've seen the floor. The floor is really, really bad. The floor is a terrible floor. It could be the worst floor of any team in the league, the way they looked in week 1. So that scares me. I am definitely going to take the 49ers outright. And why not? I'll take them to cover as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, the fact that San Francisco has looked so good, I would almost take their line against anyone, right, at this point. I know it's 10 points, but, I mean, dude, like, I'm not scared of that. I mean, again, this is a team that was down 20-0 in the first half against a team that San Francisco is going to wax twice this year.
The way they cover is it's like a low-scoring game. It's ugly. It's Thursday Night Football. Kind of gets mucked up a bit, but I think still, again, the 49ers come out on top.
Okay, so we agree 49ers win this game. Giants will then fall to 1-2. The Eagles play on Monday Night Football. By the way, back-to-back weeks that an NFC East team is going to get a Thursday night game and then a Monday night game back-to-back. That's kind of weird.
Also weird because this happened with the Eagles last year too. They played on Thursday against the Texans, and then they played against Monday against the Washington Commanders. It's a weird,
which they lost,
extended layoff. Especially
Taylor Heineke bought. Remember, he bought those Jordans in the Eagles colors. Remember,
he loved to talk. This is like your Harvard Ryan Fitzpatrick thing or Eagles Steelers Steagles thing. Weird, especially coming off of week 2. Like, it's been a weird beginning of the season for the Eagles. To go from week 1 on the road to then home game, Thursday Night Football to then long layout. So it could be a good thing if you're saying, okay, mini bye, maybe they can get some of these issues sorted out, but we shall see. They are what against the Buccaneers?
The
favorite.
Oh well, no, we're not doing them next. I mean, hold off. We're going in chronological order.
Oh, duh.
But I was
Monday.
You
brought it up, so it was in my head.
No, I know. I was just saying it out loud. But by the way, what did you think of the double Monday night games on Monday?
Yeah, it's dumb.
Agreed. Good call. Good take. It's supposed to be an island game. We're supposed to all be able to gather around the internet and watch and talk about the same game together.
I don't like. Yeah, if they could do it where there were two independently, sure, I would be
start
more
one at 6 and the other at 9. I'm totally with you on that.
That's still too much. I think if you want to do that once a year as like a special thing, sure. If you want to do once a year, 2 games on Monday Night Football, yeah. Mm-hmm. But we cater to the West Coast for some dumb reason when it's just, I mean, the
It's
people
the
on the
best
East Coast have
coast.
it harder because, like, you have to stay up late to watch the games. Okay, so what? You miss some of the beginning of the game. You're still going to get to see the ending, and also you're going to have plenty of time afterwards. It's harder to get up early than it is to stay up late.
That's a good take. The Washington Commanders are at home once again, and a reminder, undefeated in the Josh Harris ownership era. 6.5 point home dogs to the Buffalo Bills, who seemed to find their footing last week. Josh Allen didn't totally learn his lesson, still played a little bit of reckless football, but it obviously didn't come back to bite him. I'm really hesitant to lay the points because I'm that spooked in Buffalo. I will take the Bills to win outright, but I do think that Washington is plucky enough to cover. That's a lot of points for a team that just 2 weeks ago, I mean, really, really, really struggled in Buffalo.
How much is it again?
6.5.
That's not too many. I'll take the Bills. I think the Josh Allen volatility gets talked about in a negative way a lot. Understandably so, because you can see the downside of that. I talked about that as being a reason why the Bills lost in week 1. But I also think people, when you talk about it only as a negative, you're discounting what can happen against the Raiders in week 2, where he can absolutely just go off.
But
So
it's not necessary like all the time. Sometimes it is, to your point, but like it's just, the Superman analogy that Dominic Foxworth had last week was so awesome and so on point. But
I heard you say this on Monday Football Monday, I believe, on the SB Nation NFL show. So you should listen to that for the full thing. But I'll take the Bills here. Commanders, prove something to me before I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt with this.
you're just so jaded against Josh Harris. I hope Allen Iverson is there, and I hope he's wearing a Commander's hat.
Allen Iverson, famously a Cowboys fan.
I know, but I was trying to think of like the Sixer that would hurt you the most that wasn't Joel Embiid, because that
I don't
already
think the
happened.
Sixers can hurt me any more than they have.
Okay. By the way, this is a week where you can watch an NFC East team, like, if
In
you
every
want,
slot.
yeah, in every slot, because the Giants are on Thursday night, the Commanders are at noon, the Cowboys are in
This is like the
Arizona.
most ideal podcast schedule for
the Cowboys are
NFC East.
visiting the former NFC East team, but the Arizona Cardinals, not the Phoenix Cardinals. 12-point favorites the Cowboys are. It's a lot of points. I'll let you go first.
NFC East teams 0-2 against the spread, against the Cardinals.
That's true.
Commanders couldn't cover. Giants couldn't cover. Can the Cowboys cover? Yeah, of course they can. Like, not really worried about it. Josh Dobbs against that defense, no thanks.
The Cowboys have had a sneaky little history with the Cardinals. If you recall, and Josh Dobbs. So if you recall, Dallas went to Tennessee last year on that Thursday night game, the final Thursday night game of the season. And Josh Dobbs played for the Titans. Remember, they had nothing to play for because they needed the following week, the regular season finale, the win-in game against Jacksonville. So they had nothing to play for, and Dallas was at the time, still trying to keep shot for shot in the NFC East race. And they kind of had a little bit of a, tooth pulling offensive performance. Granted, that wasn't against Josh Dobbs, but yeah. So I mean, he's been, he had that moment that's got me a little whatever. 2021 in December, Dallas lost to Arizona at home. Remember, the Cardinals were frauding their way to the end of that regular season, but the one win they got was at AT&T Stadium against the Cowboys. That was the game that Michael Gallup got hurt in. And then the first game that Dallas played without Dak Prescott in 2020, the Cardinals blasted them on Monday Night Football. So again, kind of a weird recent history. But that being said, the Cowboys just look too impossible to bet against right now. So I'll lay the points. Go Cowboys. Okay. Monday Night Football. Speaking of the dueling games, we have another instance of this. So are you upset, Brandon, that you will not be able to watch the Rams-Bengals game?
No.
I kind of am. I'm a little interested in that game. I mean,
Then
like, I'll
watch
have
it.
it on, but I wish I could give both these games my full attention.
I mean, I'm all right. I'll be okay.
The Eagles are in Tampa. The last time, correct me if I'm wrong, they visited, was it the playoff matchup?
Wild card round of the
Right,
2021 season, the 2022 playoffs.
The Eagles are 5-point favorites. I haven't seen any. We're still like in the launch of week 3 as far as like, shows and, takes and content are concerned. I don't know that anyone's going to do that. I don't know, man. The Bucks are 2-0. Baker's playing great. Mike Evans looks amazing. I don't know that I buy into what Baker's doing here. I know the Eagles look off, but until they kind of get embarrassed or something, or something really bad happens, like losing a game, I'm still going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Would like to see the injury report. Have not been able to see that because it is Tuesday. It doesn't usually come out till Wednesday, but especially for the Eagles, it won't even come out until Thursday for this week. So kind of really need to see that before on both sides before I get a truly better feel for this game. The one thing that does worry me about this matchup is Todd Bowles has had success against Jalen Hurts and his style of play. And for a passing game that looks out of rhythm, maybe I can't just give them the total benefit of the doubt. I'm not totally scared of the Bucks and their 2-0 record. I don't think they're terrible. I think they're fine. I think they might end up winning that division. I mean, that's not really saying a ton.
They're a sneaky contender for it, sure.
I think they could be the best team in that division or the most imposing team in that
They
division.
might have, you brought up ceilings, they might have the quarterback with the highest ceiling. You know,
I
like
think so.
When Baker's in his bag, his ceiling is higher than Derek. He's very infrequently in that bag, but you know,
Right.
he can make some plays when he's on, and we saw that at least this past week.
And it's a bad division, so it's not like saying the most, but I don't feel comfortable enough in the Eagles passing offense right now to just give them the total benefit of the doubt. I think the Bucks can muck it up a little bit here. I think the Eagles win the game, but I will take the points for the time being, which by the way did work out last week. I took the points with the Vikings. They did
That's right.
cover. Eagles won. The Vikings did cover. So 2 games in a row where the Eagles do not cover, but they do win.
Did they cover against New England? It was close,
They
right?
did.
Okay, but it was like 7.5 and they won by 8 or something like that.
They were 3.5 point favorites.
And they won by, was it 4 or
5?
6?
They won by 5 points.
Okay, so not super close, but so 1-1 against the spread this year. I could see this as, and this is also, we talked about the Monday night thing, like, you know, if it's still shaky, like this could be, I haven't seen a lot of national takes like jumping on the Eagles yet. And again, Eagles are 2-0, so there's no real reason for that. But if they were to lose, if they were to struggle, it could make for a long, short week. Because who's after that? Washington. Oh man, what if Washington knocks off the Bills and the Eagles lose to the Bucks?
Well, I think some people might actually feel better about the Eagles or that game because it's like, are the Commanders really going to start 4-0 with a win against the 4th win against the Eagles?
I don't know. I mean,
it's hard to believe.
That game is in Philadelphia. Oh, please God, let Joel Embiid show up wearing Commanders gear and hanging out with Josh Harris. That would be so funny. This is my new thing.
I don't really care about.
Okay.
I care about the conflict. I don't care about the Sixers part of it in terms of I don't really care about the Sixers right now.
That makes me sad as your friend because as a Spurs fan, I have no beef against the Sixers, but like it's sad to me how like beaten down you are as a Sixers fan. That's tough. But
it is what it is.
It's time to pick our songs this week for the NFC East mixtape playlist. Rachel, ever the on-time person that she is, submitted hers early Tuesday morning. She has gone with "Go Crazy" by Chris Brown. So that's Rachel's pick. Rachel, I told her this in the chat. Bangers. This one, it's not like up there for me as far as her other song choices. But you know, hey.
What are you gonna go with?
I actually had a little bit of a story for mine. If it'll help buy you time. 2 weeks ago now, I tweeted about. Are you a Canes fan? Raising Canes fan?
I went I think 2 weeks ago for the first time ever. It was pretty. Okay. I was pretty impressed. I liked it.
Pretty good. If you went, maybe they had this this going on. Well, probably not if it wasn't in Texas. But they have a promotion going on where you can upgrade your drink and you can get a Post Malone themed cup at Canes. So you laugh, but I tweeted about this thinking like, oh, this is just a thing. Like I'm just going to tweet about it. It got so much attention. I can't tell you how many people in my replies were saying things like they were begging other people to go get one that they would pay for and then pay for the shipping on. So I was just kind of stunned. I don't eat Canes a lot just because, I mean, it's delicious, but you know, trying to stay healthy. Like tonight we're eating salmon, you know what I mean? It's not Canes. But anyway, in the spirit of Post Malone, I'm going with the song Circles, my favorite Post Malone song.
Okay. Good pick. Yeah, Raising Cane's definitely not a sponsor, but yes, definitely very good.
I just can't I'm sure you've run into that before. Like I couldn't believe how many people were going rabid over these cups.
I'm not shocked from a standpoint that I was going to say people, especially here in this part of the country, like their local stuff. Like if you could have some kind of
if you could have like a Wawa Eagles cup, I guess you'd go line up for it.
Yeah, and like Bradley Cooper's on there or something. You know what I mean? Right. Some kind of local time. People love that kind of stuff because it feels just like unique to your region. It's something that's special as opposed to just any raising like national thing that could be any
Right,
part of the
right.
country. I think people like that, and I get it. That's
Were
part of
you
what
a
makes
on this subject? Were you a big like McDonald's kid collector or toy collector
the
from the kids'
Disney
meals?
glasses. Well, I remember having like the Disney glasses, I think, from them.
There was the Disney.
Definitely
I the one I remember most prominently
might have been Burger King.
when the Inspector Gadget movie came out with Matthew Broderick.
Oh yeah.
They had all the pieces.
Yes.
Bless
I
her
had
heart.
that.
She would call and be like, "Do you have the right arm?" And like we would go to that McDonald's so I could build the whole Inspector Gadget. So
I
love
used
my
to
mom.
go with my grandma when she would babysit me, and I think we ended up going enough to where we could get the whole Inspector Gadget. That was a lot of fun. That's a great. Come on, like that's a great idea, and just in
That was
terms of
awesome. I
for
totally agree with
everyone,
you.
like great
Totally agree. Like,
marketing, great
mhm.
integration. It's like everyone wins there. Everyone's having fun. Burger King
Yeah,
is making their money because they're getting all these kids to come back
it's
and back. It's just
McDonald's. It
it's a
was
win
McDonald's,
or
not
whatever.
Burger King.
The
To be
point
very
is,
clear.
it's a win for everyone involved.
Yeah, it's not like I mean, like the collect them all bit is really cool in general. Like whenever there's anything that you have to collect all of, but like this was so cool because you almost couldn't play with it
It was
unless you had all of
functional.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it wasn't
exactly. And
just
it
like get them for the sake of collecting them.
exactly. Okay. Are you gonna pick the Inspector Gadget theme? Is your song?
I am not. I'm going to go with "Everyone Blooms" by the Front Bottoms, who I hope to see in Philadelphia. I think they're coming 2 weeks from. They're coming soon, and at the end of the month here, hoping to go there. But the some of the lyrics in that song, I'm not going to sing it for you, but they go that everyone blooms in their own time, and I think that is the theme of the NFL season. And some of these teams are not their fully formed selves yet. And that doesn't mean they're all going to get there. Obviously, there's going to be teams who don't end up being what they want to be, but I think some of those teams will be. The Bengals were 0-2 last year before they ended up going to the AFC Championship game. Is that the exception? Very much so. Are the Bengals also 0-2 this year? Yes, they are. And I don't know where they're going to go, but the point is that you've said it a lot, specifically when it comes to the Eagles. And it's funny to me, it's like everyone keeps having to say, yeah, but they're 2-0. It's like, if you keep having to say that, that does kind of speak to there being a concern. But at the end of the day, it's also true that they are 2-0. And that's a very, I mean, just seeing, I was so part of where I was watching football with my friends, and their favorite team lost and just devastated. It was like they might as well have been like 0-17. Like it's like the whole season's over. So yeah, I'd rather be 2-0 than that.
That's the thing. Like all of the you're referencing the Eagles, but like whatever. Like all of these problems or issues or whatever are much easier to bear and figure out when you're 2-0 as
Hmm.
opposed to being like you would not swap places with the Bengals. You know what I mean?
No,
Or even the Chiefs, right? Like do the Chiefs are they happy they're 1-1? No. Like you know what I mean? Like like being 2-0 will matter if you lose 4 games in a row or whatever cuz you know what? You'll be 2-4 as opposed to 0-6, right? Like like think about the Chargers. The Chargers had such promise. I don't know why. I'll never get it. But like, they're already like deeply behind the 8 ball because they're 0-2. It's not quite a kiss of death, but it's a much bigger deal than it seems like. And that's not to quote all the statistics and everything, but like it's a whole. Like it takes multiple weeks. I think it takes like more than half a month to get out of being 0-2, like to get on the positive side.
who did the Chargers play in week 1 again?
They lost to the Dolphins with all the points.
Well, then who
And
they lose to in
the
this week?
the
They lost
Titans.
to, so they've lost to like 2 teams that could be like, they could be jockeying with for a wild card position with. And like, yeah, so those like, it's not just that they're 0-2, but they've also lost to 2 teams that could impact their playoff race. So yeah, very much could always be worse.
They play the Vikings this week. Well, I can't wait to talk about this on Friday, but you could totally see them losing that game, right? Like, and then they play the Raiders. And so, like, again, like, are you willing to say, like, oh, I would 100% take the Chargers over the Raiders? You can't right now. Like, the Brady looks awful. You know what I mean? So, like, just like, again, crafting a hypothetical. You're 0-4, then they're on a bye week. So then you have to sit on that for a week. And then after that, you get the Cowboys. I mean, and what if you lose and the offense of the Cowboys, like, is awesome and Kellen Moore stinks? And then it's like, oh, we got the bad part of this, So, it's a tough time of year, but it's the best time of year. I stayed up till 1:30 on Saturday night watching the Colorado game. It was awesome.
I couldn't make it. I watched the first half, but I was very tired.
Well, East Coast being the worst coast, tough situation. But all right, let's get out of here. And as we do, Brandon, tell us your favorite thing that is East that can't the coast or the NFC.
That's a good one. The best thing that is east that can't be the coast or the division.
Yeah.
East. East Lansing is coming to mind, but that's not true. Can I say East Side?
You can, but you have to say it in a funny voice so we can end on that.
No, I don't want to say that either. I'm gonna say East. Oh, well, how about where I was over the weekend? East of Boston.
I will say that it's in the what's it called? Like not an acronym, but like the little thing to remember the directions. Never eat soggy waffles. It's the best word of those four. Like never eat soggy waffles. So it's the word eat. There's that.